In the magical combat class, while practicing running, Hayward is sad because Bahil deducted 10 marks from his homework and thinks magical combat is the best. Hayward is exhausted, and Simon tells Malin not to overwork herself, but she surpasses him. Simon remembers Kami told him that Malin did physical training the whole day. Kami told Simon that Malin said she could cast Dark Flare with no problem, but she couldn't rely on their words to avoid the Cyclops attack, and afterward, they studied together in the evening. Simon was shocked that Malin studied on top of physical training, and Kami said Malin studied all night without getting any sleep. When Kami asked if she was tired, Malin said she was okay because she had taken an awakening potion. Simon thinks Malin is always studying whenever he sees her, and that's admirable about her, but he wonders why she puts that much effort into school homework. Malin excitedly calls his friends to take a look at how she springs off the darkness and asks Simon if there is anything to adjust. But Simon says she is doing well. Malin gets happy that it was worth it to have kept practicing for tomorrow, and Kami tells her she is amazing. Simon suggests she should not overwork herself because they passed the simulation and are sure they'll pull it off in the actual battle, too. Malin says she is aware, but she is not going to settle with just passing and is working hard to get the first place no matter what. But Simon is worried for Malin. After some while, Hunpeng asks if Simon is practicing the darkness operation that she taught him, to which Simon replies it's improved a lot since he first learned it. Hunpeng says he has a better flow of darkness now, his overall capability has also enhanced and he has become stronger. Hunpeng says, as she said before, Simon was born to major in magical combat. Suddenly, the teaching assistant tells Hunpeng that they have an injured student who seems to have sprained her ankle. Hunpeng says she'll take a look and before leaving tells Simon to remember that only repeated practice will improve his skills. Suddenly, when Simon asks his friends where Malin is, Kami replies she does not know because she was in the back of the group all along. And Hayward says he also doesn't know because Kami came to him looking for Malin. Simon sees Hunpeng look serious, and they are shocked when they see Ta bringing Malin on his back as her ankle is sprained. They take her for the examination, and the doctor says her ankle is severely sprained, so she'll be on crutches for a while. The doctor says it's okay for her to attend the lectures, but she cannot participate in hands-on classes requiring physical activity for a week. Malin gets up and says it's nothing serious. She can walk and practice in hands-on classes, but suddenly she feels a lot of pain in her ankle. The doctor tells Malin that it's not a suggestion, but an order and students would worry about surviving in Kizan. But he is a doctor, and the recovery of his patients comes first. The doctor says he'll take her out of all the classes that require walking, so Malin apologizes to everyone and tells them to leave her alone for a while. Simon tells Malin that nothing will change if she wallows in self-pity, but Malin asks what they will do about the Cyclops battle tomorrow. Simon says they'll find another way, but Malin says they practiced their plan for a whole week, and tomorrow is the actual battle with the living Cyclops. Malin asks if he is mocking her and yells it's all her fault so he can mock her, but Simon scolds her that it's enough and asks if it's okay with everyone. Then he'll be the fighter for their group tomorrow. The next day, students enter the dungeon, and Hayward says Nephtes is amazing and wonders how Kizan managed to get so many dungeons and ruins together. Kami says Roke Island is small, but since Nephtes is a collector, it's likely when she discovers ancient ruins, she will bring them to Roke Island. Malin also comes with them, but other students discuss that it's bad because if one team member gets injured, the whole team is ruined. When Kami questions if they'll be okay, Hayward replies they'll be fine and that they should trust Simon. After Team 6's evaluation is completed, Team 7 is asked to step forward, and Simon tells his teammates that it's okay that the situation has changed a bit, but it doesn't mean that their efforts are lost. Simon tells them to give their best until the end, and their evaluation starts as the Cyclops enters there. Jane tells the students that they do not need to push themselves too hard, and if they feel like they can't do it, they should ask for the exam to be stopped. The exam begins, and Simon tells everyone to do as they planned and grab its attention first. But Cyclops breaks Simon's skeleton and tries to attack Simon. Simon dodges its attack. Hayward says in simulation, the Cyclops first attacked the skeletons, but now it seems it's attacking Simon from the start. Simon continues to dodge its attacks and uses Restore to attack Cyclops, but the sword of Simon's skeleton breaks. Simon feels this Cyclops is much harder than in the simulation, and sees it's entering the exhaust range. As Kami and Hayward use exhaust, Simon immediately jumps in the air and throws a dagger at Cyclops, but it dodges it, and only its face is scratched. Cyclops furiously starts attacking Simon, and Simon dodges most of the attacks, but suddenly he gets hit. Jane's teaching assistant thinks something is off, and there seems to be a problem with Cyclops, and its specs are far exceeding those of other teams. The teaching assistant tells Jane that the Cyclops is not getting cursed even with its rampaging symptoms, so he tells Jane to stop the test and bring in a new Cyclops, but Jane tells him to watch for now. The teaching assistant says it's not fair, but Jane says fairness isn't a crucial virtue in Kaizen and asks if teaching assistants only pick weak opponents in actual combat, and abort a mission if their opponent exceeds their expectations or if there are unforeseen variables. The teaching assistant says it's not an actual fight, it's a simulation, and the kids are too young, but Jane says age is not a factor. Jane tells the assistant that quantitative measures like tests and grades are not important because what matters the most is what they learn from the experience. Jane says what matters is the fact they are at Kaizen, so they should trust the students and watch them. Jane says the kids have realized they need to change, and meanwhile, Simon understands something is wrong. Hayward starts worrying about why Cyclops is unscathed even after getting exhausted 3 times and wonders how many hits it takes to stop it. Simon tells his teammates to give up on the curse because it doesn't seem to be working, and Malin also realizes the other teams succeeded with exhaust, but for them, it's not working. Simon says he doesn't know the reason, but they should attack from a different direction and tell his teammates to do whatever they want to do. Simon tells them to forget all the tactics they came up with and help him however they want. Tommy immediately uses the hematic spell to bind Cyclops' eyes. Hayward passes enchanted swords to Simon's skeletons, and Simon tells them to focus and recall the feeling Bahel showed them. Simon immediately summons all his skeletons, and they stab the Cyclops while his eyes are tied. The students see that Group 7 came up with a hastily improvised strategy, and it's not bad, but Simon thinks he can do better than this. Fear told Simon it takes a strong will to move the undead, and a top-notch necromancer should be able to infuse unwavering resolve even into the most trivial things. And with the same determination, there can be emotions like anger, hatred, and malice. Fear told him the more negative the emotions, the more powerful the effect, so with great hatred, Simon orders his undead to kill the Cyclops, and the skeletons start stabbing the Cyclops with full force. Suddenly, the Cyclops rushes to attack Simon. It's too late for Simon to dodge, but Malin immediately uses darkness elemental magic, Dark Frost, and creates an ice wall around the Cyclops. Malin tells Simon not to stop, and that he'll win, so Simon thanks her and tells Kami to do her part. Kami immediately uses Ursula hematic magic, Bleeding Overflow, which makes the Cyclops bleed, and she tells Simon that it's all in his hands now. Simon tells them to leave it to him, and using bone nails as Aaron taught him, Simon stabs the Cyclops, making them fall. Simon immediately asks for Navia potion, which Malin instantly throws at the Cyclops' wounds, and it starts working. Simon wishes it to stay down, but suddenly the Cyclops tries to get up, so Simon thinks it's all meaningless unless it's instant death. Simon asks for the sword, so Hayward, using his enchantment, passes Simon a sword. Simon is going to finish the Cyclops, but he falls because his legs have no strength. Malin helps Simon jump in the air, and he stabs the Cyclops back and immediately uses his skeleton's hand to cut off the Cyclops' head. Jane announces they have succeeded in hunting the Cyclops, so Hayward emotionally hugs Simon and tells him he is best. Kami is glad Simon made it, and Malin says she owes him once, but Simon says she did well, too. Kami hugs Malin, saying she is amazing, and Hayward also says her ice magic spell was too cool. After some while, Jane tells the students they did great, and she is pleased as a professor that no one in the class was seriously injured during the practical assessment. The students thank her, but Jane says the result matters most, and she starts the evaluation from Group 1. Jane evaluates that Cindy's spiritology skills were amazing, but the strategy that relies on one person and makes many mistakes is a clear reason to deduct points. Jane tells Carol and Una of Team 2 to shake hands because if they have grudges, it would be better to resolve them soon. Simon is shocked that Jane knows even the small fights between the students, but Hayward says that's not the only thing to be shocked at. Malin says too many groups succeeded in hunting down the Cyclops, and only about 8 were successful in the simulation. But now there are 13. Jane gave an A+ grade to Hector's group because they had a clear distinction of roles for each member with great teamwork, and their hunting time was less than 4 minutes. Jane says they did great work, and Hector gets happy, but for Group 7, Jane says they were a mess and took 13 minutes and 58 seconds. Jane says their fighter's barrier gauge was a single digit at 7%, and their behavior was reckless and didn't match the initially planned strategy. Jane says their grade is D, but that's when the particular piece of information is not reflected in the grade. Jane shows them the autopsy result of the Cyclops that Group 7 hunted and says the results showed that the curse and potions used to capture the Cyclops initially caused unusual side effects to the creature. Jane says the Cyclops that Group 7 fought against showed extreme aggression and went out of control once the curse was lifted. In addition, its physical strength drastically increased temporarily, and as such, the Keysen administration determined that Group 7's assessment was clearly different from the other groups in terms of difficulty. The administration concluded that the Cyclops Team 7 defeated was found to be a Cyclops of the same level as a Red Cyclops. Team 7 gets shocked, and Jane says they should apply the new evaluation standard for fairness. Jane says Malin used darkness elemental magic that surpasses the average level of Keysen first grader, and has played the most critical role in protecting the fighter. Jane says it's Malin's fault that she got injured from overtraining and bad self-management. But despite the injury, her spirit was impressive. Therefore, she grants 80 points to Malin as her individual score. Next, Jane says Hayward used the high-performance darkness enchantment at the right place at the right time, serving to smooth the process of defeating the Cyclops, so she also grants him 80 points as his individual score. Jane says Camibres has properly performed the role of a key damage dealer using hematology, and such hemorrhage is rare to find even among the Necromancers, so Jane gives her 85 points as her individual score. To Simon, Jane says he fulfilled his role as the fighter and showed his capability to cope with the unexpected variables and the leadership of taking care of his teammates. Jane says he demonstrated physical and dark operation abilities while avoiding attacks, buying time, and demonstrating various applications of the restoration skill. Jane says Simon didn't give up until he finished the Cyclops for good, and it was perfect, so she grants him 100 points as his individual evaluation and says it's a pity there is no grade above a plus. Simon celebrates his win with his teammates while Hector's blood is boiling with jealousy. At night, Group 7 celebrates their win with Hung Peng, but they see it's real beer in their mugs, and Hung Peng tells them not to worry because she is their guardian for the night. Hung Peng says she got special permission from Keysen to congratulate them on their amazing performance assessment, and they must be having a hard time since the student protection period is lifted. Hung Peng tells them to keep up the good work, and suddenly, Hayward says that they are enjoying the opportunity to have a drink with her, so he would like to ask a question. Hung Peng tells him to go away with it, so he asks if she happens to care more for Simon than other students, but Malin is startled to hear his question. Hung Peng replies professors are humans also, so they have students they like and those not as much. Hung Peng says she loves and cherishes all students and has good news for them. Next week, they'll finally be out on a mission. The next day, Hayward tells Simon that mission is one of the core systems of Keysen, and after the student protection period is over, they get a mission period, which is usually about 5 days, and during the 5 days, they can take various requests that come from outside of Keysen. Hayward says the requests range from miscellaneous work and part-time jobs to exterminating monsters, personal security, assassination, and proxy battles. Simon says the requests sent to active necromancers will also come to students, so Simon thinks there must be a lot of dangerous requests too, and they would need compensation then. Hayward says depending on the difficulty and the completion of the request, Keysen provides us with an evaluation score. Hayward says requests are the best way to cover material fees used in Keysen, and since Simon is going to major in summonology, this should be a good chance to make a fortune. Hayward says there are a few things they should not forget during this period. They must complete at least one request during the mission period, because if they fail all of the requests during that period, then they fail the mission, and they'll also need to write a letter of explanation. Hayward says they could continue on the request beyond the mission period until they complete it, but he wouldn't recommend it because they cannot attend classes during the extended mission period. Hayward thinks it's better to give up the mission period rather than mess up the attendance and other studies. Some students get manageable requests and get over with it quickly to focus on studying, and others get out of the island and solve a big case for money and grades, so Simon says they are free to come up with any plan. Suddenly, Hayward tells Simon to look at the explanation of the envelope color used for requests, and to pick which suits his plan. Hayward tells him not to pick an easy request because, at Keysen, they must manage their mission grades in addition to the school grades, and if they fail in mission grades, they might end up getting dangerous tasks, so he prohibits Simon from putting it off too much even if the request seems intimidating. Hayward tells Simon to take a look and make up his mind, and he'll meet him after he decides. Fear tells Simon not to ponder because they are leaving the island, and they must make it their priority to go out to the continent to gather up the soldiers for the battalion and recover their past glory. When Simon asks if there are any undead soldiers stronger than Fear, he yells that he is the master of the battalion and no one dares to oppose him. Fear informs Simon that some of the generals under the battalion were true monsters and that the battalion consists of several undead troops. Fear says the ancient undead with intelligence commanded the soldiers under them, so Simon gets excited to find them. But he doesn't know where they'll find those generals. Fear tells Simon not to worry because he is sure they will be causing trouble around the continent, and he remembers all their characteristics. So he tells Simon to look a closer look at the requests. Simon skips the missions on Roke Island, and Fear tells him to look at the red requests. But suddenly, Simon bumps into Hector. Hector asks if Simon is also going to the neutral zone, a lawless area where Kizan can't exert its influence, and warns Simon that Kizan won't know no matter what trouble they get in. Hector hopes they run into each other during the mission, but Simon tells him to look after himself. Simon starts looking for the request and asks what Fear thinks about the one where a village is raided by the zombies. But Fear says the infection is too common, and even a necromancer can cause that, and all the missions on the board have nothing to do with the general's abilities. Suddenly, Fear tells Simon to look at the blue envelope on the board, and Simon thinks someone made a mistake posting it in the red envelope section. Simon reads the request and says it's a missing person case in which young women are found as completely dried corpses. Fear tells Simon to show him the detailed material of that request, and when Simon sees the pictures of the dead bodies, he gets terrified. Fear says it has to be an ancient undead who leads a troop of spiders, Urzebet. On the other hand, a priest is also on the same mission, and she assures the Pope that she can solve this and it's the goddess's will to save the people of the continent from the evil deeds of the dead. The priest Ellen Zyle, the second-year student of the Holy College of Ifnel, says in the name of the Holy Father and the goddess, she'll solve the case at all costs. Simon Follentia is standing outside the Vice-Chancellor's office. The Vice-Chancellor, Jane Olivia of Kizan, is busy in her office doing some paperwork. Simon musters the courage, knocks on the door, and tells Professor that it is him, Simon, to which she grants him permission to come inside. While writing something on a scroll, she asks Simon if he is there because of a mission. Simon replies yes, he wants to go on a mission. Professor Jane says, let's take a look at the mission he has selected. Simon slides the paper onto her desk and says here it is. After seeing the paper, Professor Jane tells him to get a different request because it isn't something a first grader can handle. Simon thinks that she turned him down so quickly, so he tells the professor that he wants to take on this request no matter what, and Simon is confident that he can solve it. Jane tells Simon that he must have a good reason for saying that he is confident in front of a Kizan professor, so he doesn't need to convince her as she signs the paper and hands it to Simon. She tells Simon that he is a member of Kizan. All he needs to do is take responsibility for the result, and she hopes that Simon is not misleading her. Simon is happy to hear that, and he thanks the professor for trusting in him. Jane tells him to return safely, to which he replies that he will. Simon returns from the office. Dick asks Simon if the professor is letting him go. Simon starts laughing and tells Dick that the professor gave him permission to go on the mission. Malin also asks Simon if he is taking that case when she clearly tells him how hard it is to complete an investigation case within 5 days. Simon thanks Malin for her concern. She starts blushing and tells him that she is not concerned for him. It is not like that. Simon starts laughing and asks Malin where she is going, and she replies that it is a personal security mission near Langerstein. She winks and tells Simon that it is easy enough, and it also yields good grades. Simon asks Malin what if she runs into thieves or some other danger. She proudly tells Simon that then she will show them this. If they have any brains, they will not touch a Kizan student. Simon says that seems a bit cowardly, but Malin says that it is not cowardly, and that is the reason why everyone is sending their requests to Kizan. Malin waves her hand and tells Simon that she is going to leave so she will see him next week. Simon tells her to be careful and not to get hurt. Suddenly, Simon notices Cern sitting there on a bench. She greets him with a smile and says that they haven't seen each other since the matriculation ceremony, so let her officially introduce herself. She says that her name is Cern Eindark, the official successor of the Ivory Tower and Special Admission number 2. Simon also tells her his name and that he is from Leshill. There is an awkward silence between them. Cern starts speaking after a while and says that she has heard that Simon is looking after Malin. Malin might snap at him sometimes, but she is kind and tender-hearted inside, so please continue to take care of her. Simon is annoyed as he asks Cern why she would say that to him. Simon tells Cern that Malin is also a student at Kiezen just like her, and she isn't someone Cern should protect or consider as her junior. Malin is doing well without Cern having to worry about her. There is an announcement that the teleportation device will be activated soon. Don't reach out to the device during the operation. Serene is amused after hearing Simon's reply and tells him that they will see each other as soon as she disappears. Before getting teleported, Simon thinks that he is exhausted just from talking to Cern. She has such a force, she is like some queen or a high-rank noble. Simon says that Malin is also from the Ivory Tower, so he understands that Cern is worried about her, but it gets on his nerves how she treats Malin like her subordinate. Simon never knew that he could get tired from simply exchanging a few words. Fear is hiding inside an armor. He is angry as he asks Simon why he got him such a small armor. It is so cramped in here. Simon tells him that he can't help it because it is the only one left, and he can't just bring him around without a proper disguise because everyone will get scared. Simon tells Fear that they are at the request site, so he asks Fear what they should do next, to which Fear replies that the basics of solving a request are collecting information, and one way of collecting information is meeting the client, and the client is the lord of this town, so he should tell them that he is a Kiezen student and get all the information he can, but judging from how the client couldn't solve the case until now, there must be some reason that it is unsolved yet. Simon approaches the town while Fear is following him in disguise. Fear tells Simon that the next method is doing legwork. He did this a lot when he was out on missions with Richard. In his experience, this often turned out to be the fastest way. Simon says that it sounds good, but they only have 5 days to solve it. He is afraid that they might run out of time, to which Fear replies that there is a final method. In other words, it is buying information from the Thieves Guild or Information Guild. Simon says that it sounds good, but they need to find out if there is an Information Guild first. Fear tells Simon that he can ask the owner of an inn or a pub for that, to which Simon agrees and cheerfully tells Fear that they should go and do that since they are running out of time. After searching for a while, Simon and Fear reach the pub. The bartender welcomes them. Simon tosses a gold coin at the bartender and tells him that they need a clean and spacious room and breakfast tomorrow morning. Also, a wheat bread will do. The bartender thanks Simon and asks him if he would like the change, to which Simon replies no, but tells him where the Thieves Guild is instead. The bartender asks Simon what business brought him there. Simon asks him how he can talk to his customers like that as he puts his hand in front of the bartender and tells him that 1 gold coin for the information. Fear is amused and says that a kid wet behind the ears knows how to play with a grown-up. Simon bangs his hand on the table and tells the bartender to give them all of the information about the missing persons incident. Fear is also pointing his sword at the bartender. After some time, while coming out of the pub, Simon says that he is glad that they went all out. Fear says that was a great move because now they can speed things up. Simon says that most of the missing persons are young men, but it is mainly women who are found as mummified corpses, and there is no sign of sexual assault on the victims. Fear says that she captured and had fun with young men, and since women didn't interest her, she just sucked their blood out. That sounds exactly like something Elizabeth would do. She is in this town, and he is sure of it. Simon and Fear reach the guild. A man welcomes them and asks them what they would like, to which Simon replies that he has heard that there is a special menu. He puts his hand inside his pocket and asks if they can have that ready as he flips a coin at the table. After seeing the coin, the man says let him take Simon inside. He opens a door and tells Simon and Fear to go inside. There is a woman in a red dress standing inside the room. She asks Simon what brings foreigners like themselves to her guild. Simon tells the girl that he is there to purchase the information. The girl asks him what kind of information he is looking for, to which Simon replies that he needs to know about the people who went missing in this fiefdom, the mummified corpses, and everything her guild knows about the case. The girl is surprised to hear that and tells Simon that it would cost him quite a lot. She wonders if a first-year Kiezen student like him can afford all that. Simon is a little worried after hearing that. The girl starts laughing and tells him not to be alarmed as it is a simple deduction. The lord of the land is desperate to solve this case, so he sent out requests to many entities to solve the case, so she is sure that Kizan was one of them. The girl further explains that as Simon might have noticed on his way here, this is not a big fiefdom. Their lord doesn't have money to hire a necromancer from the headquarters, so the only remaining option was to reach out to students, and the students coming from Kizan at this time of the year are freshmen. Simon says that is an interesting deduction, so he will also give it a try. Simon grabs her by the wrist and says a serious case has occurred and shaken up the whole fiefdom. Just like she said, the Lord must have asked many people to help solve the case, and many of those people accepted the request and came to this information guild of the fief, but no one could solve the case, unfortunately. As a result, the case found its way to him. Even the residents didn't know much about the incident. The same incident has happened over and over in the past years, but no one even had a guess as to who the culprit may be, let alone solve the case. He says that it is a little odd how little information is available, so he thinks everyone is confused because of someone's clever lies. Otherwise, it makes him think that the Information Guild of the Fief is incompetent. But Simon doesn't think that it is the case. She doesn't look so incompetent to him, so he asks her if he is wrong. Simon places his hand on her head, pulls her closer to his face, and asks her to tell him the truth before he turns this place upside down. The girl apologizes and asks Simon if he could let go of her arm first. Simon lets go of her arm. The girl says that she supposes she doesn't have a choice since he wants the truth so badly, but the risk from the information is solely on him. She asks if he still wants to know, and Simon replies, of course. She asks them to please wait for a moment as she disappears behind a curtain. Simon is flushed and says that was a long shot, but it sounds like there is something more to dig around if they can figure out where Erzabet is. Fear suddenly starts laughing, so Simon asks him what is wrong. Fear tells him that he wasn't sure at first, but now it is clear. He tells Simon to keep his eyes wide open. Simon asks Fear what is he talking about, as there is a person behind Simon who starts acting strangely. Suddenly spiders start coming out of his body. Fear tells Simon that the woman is Erzabet herself, and the spiders crawling on the floor are Erzabet's children, the corpse spiders. Erzabet comes out and tells Simon that his strong will is impressive, but it is a shame that she will not be able to see him again. She has a wicked smile on her face as she looks scary. Her spiders start attacking Simon. He shouts at Fear. Fear tells Simon not to worry as he grabs his sword and start attacking spiders. Fear asks Erzabet what kind of wicked plan she is scheming in such a small town. He tells her that the battalion is back and orders her to stop this nonsense and return at once. Erzabet starts smiling and tells Fear that she refuses. He is quite dumb, and Richard uses them all he wants and then abandons them like trash. Suddenly, the roof starts collapsing, and Fear tells Simon to duck as he is protecting him with the sword. Erzabet gets angry and asks Fear that after all that disgrace, he is still sticking with the battalion. Fear stabs a spider and says how foolish of her. Her thoughts must be polluted by the humans she mingled with. The battalion is the power and will itself. He asks Erzabet how can a general like her be swayed by such trivial emotions, which Erzabet replies that Richard pushed his comrades of decades into a death trap over a mere girl, so she loathes Richard to death for that. Fear is angry after hearing that and throws his sword at Erzabet, but she stops it with ease. Fear tells her that he can't put up with her arrogance anymore, and the sword flies back into his hand. Fear asks her how dare she defy the master of the battalion, and if she has already forgotten those days when she crawled to him like a dog. Fear attacks her again, but she manages to escape to the roof using her spider webs. Erzabet tells Fear that he talks big, but his powers are much weaker, which means his seal must have broken recently. She starts grinning and tells Fear that she will see him and the boy from Kizan later. Fear asks her if she is running away. Simon says that the entire Information Guild was Erzabet's gang, and now she is gone. Fear says that it would have been a piece of cake for her to control the information. Fear cuts a spider in half and says that these little spiders, there are just so many of them. A voice comes from the rooftop, and it is a bummer. She was waiting for the two monsters to fight each other to death, but she guesses that she is not that lucky. She is holding a staff in her hand and says that she should go after Erzabet, but after she ends them all here. She starts smiling and says farewell to everyone as a flare starts shining from her staff, and she attacks Simon and Fear with her light. After the attack, the priest starts looking down to find the bodies, but can't find anyone. She is disappointed that she missed the soldier and the little boy, so she decides to go after the spider monster. Fear says now a priest is meddling in this case. It is becoming such a mess, while Simon asks how they ended up in this chaos and how they find Erzabet now. Fears tells him not to worry. She is nearby. When she used her skills just now, he could sense her darkness, and he is tracking that darkness at the moment. They should run into her if they follow the trail. Simon says that is a relief, but the priest just now seemed to be pretty powerful.